So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Andy Cook, Andrew Cook. I go by Andy, and I'm a senior HR analytics solutions lead at TE Connectivity. We're here today to talk to you about our version of HR analytics. It was built by a small team of analysts, mainly Brad and myself, and two really talented developers, Randy and Earl, who help us on the programming side of things. We use a system approach that includes governance, it includes big data hub technology, it includes data preparation, of course, visualization, and finally, we'll talk a little bit about our concept of a analytics community. We realize these topics are pretty broad, and in 45 minutes, we're not going to be able to get into a lot of the details here. So we're going to do something a little bit different, try to keep this as conversational as possible, and Brad will talk about that a little bit later when he gets into his presentation. Just a little bit of background about myself before I pass the mic to my esteemed colleague. I've been in human resources about 10 years in various HR functions. I primarily focused at TE for the last 6 years on data and analytics. I've been an HR practitioner for 10 years, as I mentioned, and I also teach human resources at 2 different universities. Brad, say hi.
Hi. Hi, I'm Brad Gaston, HR Analytics Solutions Lead at TE Connectivity. Andy, you set the bar high, calling me esteemed. I don't know if I can live up to that expectation.
I was being polite.
Yeah, I thank you for that. I too have 10 years experience in the HR field. 2 of those 10 years specifically to the HR analytics space. But through my course of HR experience, I've done some analytics with respect to benefits and performance and goal management. But the interesting thing is, before I started at TE Connectivity, I actually worked as a janitor in a small school in a New England town. And it just so happens, Andy, he was a teacher at that school in analytics. I think you were working on your Fields Medal at the time. I can't remember.
I already had it.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's what was going on. But he had posted, I think it was a capstone in his class, this analytics problem. Of course, I wandered to the room, was cleaning things up, and I took it upon myself to get some chalk and solve that problem. Of course, the rest is history. All right, cheesy references aside, what page through here? I know we're on the last day here today, but the good news is there'll be some on-demand content that you can check out. So just make note of these when you're looking at the on-demand content. You can check these sessions out to get some good information. So when we look at the agenda today, we'll go over, of course, the obligatory who we are, what we do at TE, the analytics roadmap as far as where we are on the continuum and kind of see where you are on that continuum as well. Data governance, what I like to say is taking that steaming pile of HR data poo and polishing that out into making it a little bit more of a consumable by the human eye as well as Tableau. Then getting into our HR data architecture, our past, our present, our future, and like Andy had mentioned before, we want to keep this conversational. So right around that time, we'll pause briefly, just take a few questions regarding kind of the first part of the presentation that will feed us through the last half. Our vision portal, which is how we actually share our visualizations, and we'll go into our vision community, which we're going to leverage to help build our HR analytics gap. And let's take a look at who we are as TE.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Brad. So before we dig into the content for today's discussion, I want to provide a brief overview of TE Connectivity, which has been described as the largest company in the world that no one has ever heard of. We operate in 63 different countries, about $12 billion in revenue, and we make products for things every one of you has probably with you today: phones, cars, appliances. We make things for your oil rigs, if anybody in here is in the oil business. But that's what we do. So we're going to show a 1-minute video on what we do and who we are.
An antenna that opens a home to the Internet of Things. A contactless connection that transfers data and power through air. A sensor that sets the future of connected cars in motion. At TE Connectivity, these are the small but vital parts of your brilliant ideas. Around the world, over 7,000 TE engineers are collaborating with you to solve your toughest problems. We're using aluminum in automotive applications to reduce wire weight by 49%. In data centers, we transmit 400 gigabits per second while using significantly less power. And we're allowing your innovations to work in the harshest environments. From 11,500 feet below sea level to the surface of Mars, and everywhere in between. Whether it's hot, corrosive, or pressurized, our connectors and sensors can be used in everything from oil rigs to fitness trackers. Our components are in virtually every vehicle, making them safer, greener, smarter, and more connected. We're working with industry leaders, and we're partnering with a new generation of innovators to bring their ideas to life. At TE Connectivity, we know that true innovation is possible only when it's in close collaboration with you. Let's create something brilliant together.
Cool, huh? Everybody pumped now? You know what we do? You're up.
So let's kind of take a look at where we're at on the continuum. The days of yours, I like to call it, or the good old days, actually not that great and actually not that long ago. And what I mean by that is you don't need a DeLorean or capacitor to get back to where we were on the continuum. You can kind of see where we are on the sort of the roadmap, as it were. We have some kind of our toes dipped in a little bit of the diagnostic still, but we're really leaning heavily into the predictive stage. And what I'll do, I'll kind of go over just a high level of what each of these stages mean. That way you can kind of get an idea of maybe where you are, where you fit in on the analytics roadmap, and what it means to kind of traverse through it. So when we look at the descriptive, think of this really as data extracts. A lot of reporting, probably cobbling things together, and I like to call it, and I'll use the air quotes, of the Excel databases. A lot of human ETL. You probably heard that a lot if you've gone through a lot of sessions here where you're spending a lot of time data prep and less time on insights. Not really, I think the key point here is also looking at no insights, no business value. If you're lucky, you're delivering something in a PowerPoint, maybe with a graph, but mostly it's through Excel. And I think too, data is not real time. It's always lagging. So by the time it gets to your end consumer, that audience, something's already happened. You're more reactive than actually being proactive. Nope, let me go back one. And we look at the diagnostic piece, and now we're getting a little bit more, there's still probably some human ETL involved, but it's getting a little bit more mature of how you're delivering analytics and being able to actually draw some trends with your data. I'll keep doing that. The predictive piece, now this is a little sexier. This is nice. You're kind of at a better spot on that continuum. And this is where you're actually getting into delivering analytics through a center of excellence. And that center of excellence really sort of being collaborators instead of order takers. And that's important. Because when you think about that, you're switching that model where someone in the business is saying, I want this, I want this. You have that partnership where you can work with a collaboration so that garners more of the respect for what you're doing. And Tableau really helps to do that as well because of the visualizations and what you can do and get it a little bit quicker to market, so to speak. And the interesting thing with being able to combine internal and external data as well. And I think the key piece too, and I mentioned before in the previous stage, in this case, now you're spending less time in that human ETL aspect and more time on insights. And that starts to sort of snowball. The less time you're prepping, the more time you're actually focusing on pushing out insights. The prescriptive piece, the center of excellence is now starting to influence the actual workforce strategy, having a bit of a seat at the table now, empowering scenario-based decision-making, cost-benefit, recognizing the cost-benefit opportunities. So really what that means is being able to present a scenario to your business leaders and saying, this is what's going on, these are the opportunities, these are how we can save some money. Because ultimately that's what it is, that you make your business successful, how can you cut those costs? And then lastly on the continuum, you're looking at cognitive. This is truly where you have a seat at the table, where the COE is aligning the prescriptive solutions that you had in the previous stage, those prescriptive solutions to the overall business strategy. really putting into practice. All right, so from there, we look at the continuum. Let's take a look at some of the governance piece.
Thanks, Brad. So, as Brad just described to you, the continuum that we're on, which probably most of you in this room are on as well. Now we'll dig into the HR system that we're building, or most of it we built, with no one's favorite topic, which is governance. It's really, really important.
I like governance.
And I didn't mean to offend anybody in the audience who does, but the reason there were two primary reasons we embarked on governance first, okay? One was the inconsistent data management processes and virtual complete lack of accountability, and it hindered our ability to improve our data. The second primary reason was that we were, TE at the time, we were expanding on our HR analytics capabilities and realized very quickly that we couldn't do it without some form of governance. The way we describe governance is maybe a little bit different than it's been described to you before. While we are concerned about securing our data, it's not the only part of our governance program. The challenges stemmed from data providers primarily, not being able to accurately input data because they didn't have consistent processes. They didn't understand, in terms of HR data, they didn't understand when and where to use employee actions and that sort of thing. So our approach to governance is to empower those folks who are actually doing the data transactions. And there's three ways that we empower them primarily. One is through 175 plus business rules that we developed over the years. So in an HR context, we measure delayed termination actions as an example. So a delayed termination action is being processed in our HR system after the individual's already left the organization. Couple of problems. Big security risk, obviously, if you have folks who are no longer employed by you but still have access to your systems and your networks. Big, huge problem. So that was one of the first things that we measured was how long does it take between when person A walks out the door and person A is exited from our systems. And so each one of those 175 business rules follows something very similar to that. We assign a timeline. We say if it's delayed or it's not delayed. We also have metrics that focus on specific pieces of the employee record, if they're there, if they're not there, if they're there but don't meet a certain criteria. And so in addition to those business rules, we also put standard processes in place. Because without the processes being used across the globe, and I mentioned before, we operate in 63 different countries. So you can imagine there are pockets of HR people all over the planet, basically, who may have different ways of processing something in the HRIS system. So in conjunction with the business rules, we also have the standardized and documented processes. So somebody, an HR business partner, for example, who's affecting an employee in Taiwan, will affect the employee exactly the same way as an HR person in the UK, for example. The third part, and what we really kind of geek out over a little bit, is the transparency and accountability through what we call a Q score. Q score is just short for quality score, okay? And it's really simple the way we do this. So each month we have basically a data dump that, again, our developers were good enough to build for us, where they measure against the underlying data in our HRIS system. It produces the number of exceptions, as we call them, basically data errors. And then we make a calculation versus how many employees are in that business. And that becomes a Q score. So if you can imagine, if you have 0 defects or 0 exceptions, your Q score is 100%. And so you can be from 0 to 100. And then we match businesses against each other. We also look at it by country to see which countries are having issues meeting the prescribed audits. And so we measure that every month. It says quarterly. We actually distribute the results quarterly, but we measure it every single month. Also, if you're interested, for those of you who are corporate members of the Corporate Executive Board,
CEB for short.
CEB for short. Thanks, Brad. They recently did a profile of us, and so we have a profile now in the Corporate Executive Board for our quality program. So check it out if you can. The link is in the appendix of the presentation, which hopefully you guys will get access to. Before we move on, I just wanted to share this. I won't read it word for word because if you're all here, you can probably read this. This is the kind of reaction that we're now getting pursuant to our audit program, pursuant to our governance program, as well as some of the work that we're doing in HR analytics. This is super important because this is where we want it to be. This is the reason why we did what we did with governance. This is the reason why we did what we did with big data hub technology. This is why we do what we do, because we're tired of focusing on bad data. Now we can actually focus on real business problems. They can come to us and say, hey, we have a business problem. We think talent's a component of it. How can you help us? And so this was one of our leaders. Actually, Brad and I report to this guy, and this is part of the CEB presentation, actually. So this is why we did what we did. So after we tackled governance, this is Brad's, by the way. These are Brad's terrible puns. Terrible, good, whatever. Again, I don't want to offend anybody. After we looked at governance, the next thing was what do we do with our data? Because like most of you, we had data in Excel, we had data in Oracle, we had data in our brains, we had data everywhere. How do we get that into some sort of coherent environment so that we could use finance data with HR data? We could use compensation data with performance data. It was all over the place. And so Brad's going to talk to you a little bit about how we tackled that, how we continue to tackle that problem.
Sure. And for the record, I think they're pretty punny.
Oh.
And if you get this joke, that means you're either as old as I am. I don't have a baby face, but you're either as old as I am and or you love cheesy 80s music. And on both accounts, I feel very sad for you. And you're probably looking at this or data architecture visualization like, my gosh, what is this? It looks like something like modern art. I'm not sure how to feel about it. I'll tell you how to feel about it. Pretty sad, especially when you think about the past. And you think back to that continuum, that past slide really is where we were, the descriptive stage, where we're cobbling together the disparate data sources from Excel, SAP, Python, Oracle, all of those things, and manually doing that human ETL just to kick out an extract or maybe a PowerPoint at best. I think our only idea of analytics in the past was really just didn't extend much beyond headcount reports. We did try to build a reporting system that was sort of its first attempt at analytics, but really kind of fell short and sort of remained as just a way to sort of extract data. But the good thing is we've moved forward. We're in the present, I'll get to the future. I think we're a little bit more there than what this slide sort of depicts. But the key things with the present is now we're delivering our corporate analytics through Tableau, which is great. We're spending a lot less time on the human ETL. We have an automation tool, which I'll talk to when I get to the future slide. And again, we're spending less time on the actual prep, more time on the insights, and that ball starts to roll, and you're building that confidence level from your users, your end customers. And again, if you remember back to that continuum, we've evolved from the order takers. We're now those consultants to the businesses, and they appreciate that. And it's because we've been able to put stuff out too quick to market. They've got that trust in us now. So what do you folks think? Well, what do you think we should do? And the nice thing about Tableau, a lot of times we can have a session with those leaders and sort of work on the fly and develop solutions in the room, and that just really helps to build that buy-in as well. And that's just because of how easy Tableau is to use.
One thing I want to add to that, Brad. So the Tableau piece was so critical for us just to get our feet in the door. Because again, we came from an environment that was somewhat untrusting when it came to human resources data, and as a result, it wasn't used. And it certainly wasn't used the way it is today. So not that I want to diminish all the really awesome and smart things that Brad and I did to get us to where we are. Tableau really helped us, because if you can put something valuable in front of your customers who were raised in your environment to be skeptical of whatever your data is, Tableau helped us to get our foot in the door. So keep that in mind. If you guys aren't using Tableau already, it was instrumental in us being able to start doing what we're doing.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Andy. And I'll paraphrase a quote from one of our business leaders, and he actually said, if someone gives me another Excel data dump or pivot table, I'm going to expletive delete it. I'll keep it there. Keep it PG for the audience. But you get the idea. People get that frustration. They want something that's more, give me the aggregated information. But I think also here, Andy did a great job in the present stage of fostering a relationship with our insights team. Now, the insights team, they're on the business side of the aisle of analytics. And the cool thing about the insights team, they give us free reign to use Tableau and free reign to use Hadoop, which I'll get into when we get into the future slide, which was key. And we wouldn't be here today without that open relationship. We'll hold questions until we get to past the future part, and I'll come right to you, promise you. So that was substantial of getting us to where we need to be. And they actually, the nice thing is, it's not us or them, it's truly just us. They're often looking to us sometimes. We flip the script where they're coming to HR to see what we're doing, how we're actually exploring what's available in other different data technologies, which is pretty cool. All right, so enough about the past, present. Let's go back to the future. How many references can I make to Back to the Future in this presentation? A lot. Spoiler alert, a lot. But Andy mentioned the data hub, and that's what we're doing. We're really doing that actually more so today. You see that hub spoke architecture, taking the different disparate data sources, instead of cobbling together in Excel or Access or Oracle, we're using and leveraging the power of Hadoop. Again, our insights team allowing us to sort of use the Hadoop playground and build this model out. And the key part, if you haven't checked out Alteryx, they're fantastic. And that's where we take a lot of the data that comes out of SAP and basically using Alteryx to polish that data poo, so to speak. And that's saved us hours of time. And again, getting rid of that human ETL, quicker to market, more time on insights. So definitely check out Alteryx if you haven't already done so.
One more point on the sort of, this is kind of present, kind of future for us.
Yes.
We're still working with our implementation partners in Hadoop, which is Cloudera, to put the data structure and security in place. We know what we want it to look like. Now it's just a matter of implementing it. One thing I wanted to mention, I don't think we mentioned it so far, but we're in human resources, right? Brad and I are not IT tacticians.
And I'm lucky I can get my pants on.
It's true. I had to remind him.
Embarrassing.
I had to remind him before we came in here. We are able to administer these tools and these systems for the most part by ourselves. Okay, so if you're looking at this and thinking, wow, because we've heard this, wow, my IT team is never going to go for this. How do you guys work with IT? How do you convince them that these are the right things for your system, the right tools for your organization? Go on your own. That's what we did. Alteryx is a super good example. Brad and I needed something that Alteryx fit the bill and the organization wasn't ready for it. So we said, okay, it's relatively affordable. We'll go out, we'll get it, we'll build it into our workflows, and then at some point the organization will catch up. It only took 6 months and the organization caught up. So if you're worried that you're not gonna have the support, try it. Prove the value and they will fall in line. I promise you that.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Andy. And the key is too, when the final output going into Tableau and subsequently into the Vision portal where we share our visualizations. But what this is all built upon is what Andy had mentioned before about the governance. Without that, that's really what enables us to have that consistent HR historic data and also the defined the rules, the metrics, the definitions. That standardization really allows us to start doing the predictive data analysis that we want to get into. Without the governance, we wouldn't have that today. All right, so what I'll do now, I'll open it up to the questions, well, maybe 5-10 minutes, and then we'll kind of move on in the presentation. Gentleman in the back, and I'll do my best to repeat the question so anybody listening online can hear it. Go ahead. Yep.
Tableau environment. How do you prevent the Tableau consumers from post-processing PowerPoint, Excel?
That's a great question. There's still that chance that's going to happen, but as we get into the Vision portal, we've got executive buy-in for this portal. Our VP of HR, VP of operations, they love it. And that's where we're making that as, this is the standard. This is the gold standard. Now, there may be a chance where someone's going to cobble together their own PowerPoint, but we really want to get out of the habit of well, my numbers don't match your numbers. We don't, honestly, we're going to say we don't care. We're not going to get in that business. This is where the definition of the truth is. If you want to have true insights, true business insight, this is what you've got to use. So it's how we sort of couch, how we use the portal, and if you want sort of validated data, that's the message we send out to our groups. This is validated. We already did that work. And the good news is a lot of the business leaders, like the one that I quoted before, he gets that. And we're building that sort of buy-in as well to understand that I don't want these folks doing that. And we're going through a transformation now where that's actually helping us out, where we don't want those folks doing that. It's going to be in the COE with Andy and myself.
Yeah, there was also from the start of using Tableau, the first question everybody asks is, how do I get to the underlying data? You're probably asked it every single day. That was one of the things we knew we were going to get out of the gate, and so we addressed it up front and said, basically, this is an insights tool. It's a data visualization tool. It's not a reporting tool. We've got reporting tools. You can go out there and extract data dumps all day long if you want to. We're not in that business. And so I think it was important to sort of lay out those expectations up front. Not that everybody buys it right off the bat. It's taken us a couple of years just to sort of get people out of the data dump mindset and into the visualization mindset.
And I'll leave it with one last point. I think too, the message to those end users is, would you rather you be the one spending all that time trying to cobble things together, or would you rather, because at the end of the day, if our end users, they're consuming what we're doing in Tableau, we help them, they look awesome. Let's be honest, Tableau looks great. And that's the sell there too. I'm like, why am I going to try to do something, not to hate on Excel, maybe a little bit, but it's the time saving, and it's also how the delivery, the way it looks.
Yep.
Yes.
One question is, HR analytics a little vague for me. What are some typical business questions you try to resolve? Is it employee retention? Is it talent acquisition?
Yes.
Question is,
Yes.
Yeah, I'll repeat the question. The question was, so what is HR analytics? I think that kind of frames in what your question was. Andy, I think you had some.
Yeah, let me, so yes, the two examples you gave are really common problems in human resources, talent data problems. However, we're moving into a realm where we're not only solving talent issues, we're using talent data to solve business issues, right? Okay, so for example, a business leader comes to you and says, hey, listen, we have revenue coming in hand over fist, but our margins are weak. We think it's a cost problem. Well, what's the first thing business leaders think of when they think I need to reduce costs? Anybody? Labor, right? That's right in our wheelhouse. We've got the data already to say whether or not you're overspending or underspending in certain markets, whether you're overspending and underspending depending on your business cycles. Those are the types of problems that we want to solve using this COE. And it may come down to things like talent attraction and retention. It almost always does, right? But we want to get more involved in those business things that involve cost and involve finance data, involve sales and marketing data.
Yeah.
We think we can add a lot of value there.
I think we have time for one more question. Go ahead.
I just wanted to understand, how was the buy-in with the IT stakeholders?
Okay, so the question was, how was the buy-in with IT? I think we talked a little bit about that. We kind of went rogue a little bit and did things on our own. But once they saw what we were doing and how we were sort of leading the charge, they really kind of liked what we were doing, and it kind of helped them in their sort of side of the aisle with analytics establish what they're doing. You know, they actually had a session with us on Alteryx on how they can leverage Alteryx and Hadoop, and actually looking at how we're displaying visualizations.
Yeah.
So that was pretty key. So I think that's something that can help you if you're working with your IT department, how to better sort of foster that relationship. Try to not make it as adversarial, but more collaborative.
It's a give and take. You know,
Yeah.
We're at the point right now where, you know, we historically from IT, it was sort of a push model. You know, we got what IT pushed to us. Now we're starting to have dialogue where IT is supporting us instead of pushing things that is part of their agenda. We're talking and they're pushing things that we both need. Denodo is a really good example of that.
We're doing that there, yeah.
Something that we're working on right now. It's not part, you don't see it in here because data visualization and data access point is not part of our workflow right now. But that was something that IT came out and said, we think we need this. We're spending way too much time accessing and creating data sets for people. Denodo, we want to use that as our primary data access point. Well, that can fit into our workflow pretty well. And our response to that is, great, we'll support you. We want Alteryx. And so you have to have that sort of give and take. We'll support you for this because you need this. We need your help here. If you can have those types of conversations with your IT folks, you'll end up where we are today, which is actually really good good relationship.
All right, cool. So that's great. Some good questions. So let's get moving here. So let's actually get into this portal we keep talking about. You know, what is this portal?
I'm going to hang out over here, okay?
Okay. So when we thought about this idea of the portal, before we even put anything into this, we wanted to get something that was intuitive, that was easy to use, that really didn't have, it was on demand as well, be able to build a dashboard on the fly, something that individuals could personalize to their own, so that way they could save some favorites to their particular views, so that way they didn't have to kind of go through some other avenue of building their own dashboard. And we didn't want to send out instruction manuals with this portal. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but you know, my opinion was sometimes when you roll something out and you're trying to get adoption, sometimes those instruction manuals and videos, I think there's a little bit of an intimidation that comes with that. People think, wow, here's something I've got to learn, and it just, you may not get as much adoption if you've got something that's not as intuitive and easy to use. I mean, think of Amazon. When you went onto Amazon, I don't think any of us ever took a training video how to use Amazon. You just kind of did it. And we wanted to go off of that model. And the nice thing is we build this, we use SharePoint technology, which employees at T are familiar with, and we blend that in with Tableau Server, the power of Tableau Server as well. The one thing too, this is actually gone through some history. You know, it doesn't always look like what it is now today. It started out with kind of a single viz, where you would see just sort of one little quadrant on SharePoint, and you had a little flyout menu that you could select a list of visualizations. Then it grew to what we used to call the quad viz, where you would have just 4 panels that people could have a little flyout panel for each particular quadrant, and then bring in a visualization. Now we've taken it to what you see now today, and we'll actually demo it here in a moment, is actually leveraging a truly integrated SharePoint Tableau server that allows people to sort of drag and drop into the center panel.
2 comments I want to make before Brad moves on. One is you're looking at the word vision and thinking we don't know how to spell. That actually is that's an homage to Tableau, because we wanted to make it known that the guts of this thing are Tableau and Tableau Server, but if this is our vision for HR analytics at our organization. The second thing I want to key in on is Ondemand. So you notice we don't say shared services here. So one of the primary, I don't know what you would call it, doctrines that we decided we would follow when we started this was we weren't going to take Tableau Desktop and we weren't going to give it to the 900 HR people that we have in our organization. What we wanted to do first was build a portal that held universal information that every business, every HR person, every general manager could use that was consistent in every country and in every business. That's why we call it Ondemand, because Brad and I are still centrally developing most of the analytics for the HR group. What we're doing is delivering it to our customers in the way they want to see it, okay? So this is our foray into doing a couple things. One is giving our HR folks the comfort with data and analytics. So one of the first things our CHR told us to do was teach them how to fish. Okay, so this is our first move in teaching them how to fish. What do HR analytics look like? Where can I use them? How do I apply them? And so that's what we're doing with the Vision portal. Somewhere down the road, when everybody gets comfortable, our data gets nice and I'll say pristine, but we know that never happens. When our data gets nice enough that anybody can come in and build their own visualizations, we hope to evolve into a model where we have other folks in human resources who want to and have the aptitude to create their own insights.
Yeah, it's a great point, Andy. And I'll kind of in conjunction with that vision logo, it's a branding, right? So when you think about, if we didn't have that branding, it's really nice when we get the people out in the business, and I'll show an example when I go through the demo. If someone says, wow, I have this thing called vision, it's, well, where do I get vision? It gets that neat little sort of marketing campaign where it's just one word, and it's not a whole string of paragraph of like, well, what is it that you're using? It's a thing. It's branded, and it makes it a lot easy when someone's having an elevator conversation that, oh, Andy and Brad did this really cool thing. I think it's called vision. Go to them. And then it sells itself, so to speak. And the way we rolled out the portal, we kind of had, I don't know if you remember like Facebook in the early days where it was invite only. We did that same thing. We kind of had some fun with it where we had some key users and then said, okay, you can invite one person, and allowed that to sort of have this snowball effect. And people say, wow, what are you doing? Where are you getting those visualizations? We got it from Vision, and we started to see some requests for other people having access to it. All right, so enough hot air for me talking about this. Let's actually see the portal in action. So here's...
Can you make your resolution just a little bit smaller so we can see more of the portal? It's not in the SharePoint. I think it's in your browser. The upper, yeah, right there. Yeah. Except the other way.
The way?
The other smaller.
They're smaller?
Yeah.
Say when.
Can everybody still see that? Can you guys still read the words and everything? Everything good? Okay, cool.
All right. I think, again, this is all on SharePoint technology. It's using Tableau server, and we've built the security tools using Tableau server and some groups, and there's also some visualization level security as well as SharePoint security. So when someone comes in here, a particular user, they're only going to see the visualizations they should have access to. And they'll also only see the businesses they should have access to. And when you think about, well, in any organization, security is important. You don't want someone to see something they shouldn't, but especially in a global organization, this was key to getting the buy-in from our folks and audit and what have you to make sure we weren't actually pushing information that bypasses security. But the cool thing is it really sort of engages you to, you've got storyboards, widgets, which if you think about like the stock ticker, we really wanted something that we could pull in and keep in mind this is math data. We had a little bit of fun with some of the widget titles. And look at there's another reference to Back to the Future. I told you. But this whole drag and drop, you can build your dashboard accordingly. And essentially what I like to call, maybe you have a view that you build. Statistics. Let's do terms.
While Brad does that, so the security behind this, what it's doing, it's interacting with a SharePoint list that says, here's the URL for the visualization that's on the Tableau server, and here are the people who can see that. So when Brad goes in here and he punches out his storyboards and widget menus, that's very specific to Brad. Okay, so the example I gave with the business problem we were trying to solve, the hypothetical business problem we're trying to solve. If a leader comes to us and wants us to solve that, we're still going to deliver the results, the analytics in the portal, but we only want it to be viewed by that individual. We're hoping that by looking at business problems like that they're not the only ones that have that problem, and we can begin to build universal analytics as well, like you see here. Now this is all masked. There's nothing in here of any great value, but you can see that each one of those vizzes is actually an individual, each one of those widgets is an individual Tableau viz that's published to the server. Each one of these dashboards obviously is a published Tableau dashboard.
And the nice thing about the widgets, when you see these arrows, what do they mean? We have some enterprise-wide metrics. So this is kind of just showing that example where before it used to be delivered through a PowerPoint, where you would be end of quarter, it's lagging, things have already happened, and now it's more, here's a way people get a pulse of what's going on now, to see how you're trending against the enterprise-wide metric to see what you need to do to make a change. And the nice thing is, too, there's the ability for someone to make a favor. They can say, maybe this is Brad's Joe Viz or something along those lines. So that way they don't have to build it all over again every time they come in here. This is something they can go right to their favorite, something that may be a hot button in their particular business that's going on. They can build that on the fly. Let me reset this. And I'll show you something Andy had mentioned about the governance. And we have built a visualization storyboard that actually looks at governance specifically, our data quality audit. Because that's what really, again, gives people a pulse of how they're doing with their particular data. Because otherwise, we can talk to it, we can do that, but then it starts to fall apart. The cool thing is, too, if you wanted to expand this out, and we really like the idea of the leaders having conversations on the fly. Instead of waiting for information, they can bring this up in a meeting, pop this out in a separate window, and only look at this particular visualization. So the things that Andy was talking about with governance, I know there's pie charts in there. I know that's a no-no. It took me a while to come aboard and put the pie charts on there. But the idea behind it is you see the title of the tile is executive summary. A lot of our leaders, end of the day, just tell me what's going on. They want that one pager. So that's where sometimes when people build visualization, they go with dashboards. We love the storyboards because you can lead that tile, the first tile be your executive summary, and then have the rest of the tiles just support what's going on in that particular tile. And you've got the cool thing too is being able to actually go out to the exception definition. If someone doesn't know what it is, you can jump out to that SharePoint site. I won't go into every single one, but you get the idea of the interactivity and what we're giving people to be able to trend how they're doing with their data quality and what they need to fix. Second to last one I'll go over is, it's not just HR that we're working with. This is helping us get a foothold into the whole TE as an organization in the business side. And what I mean by that is our security team, and not security from a data security, but our actual employee security, keeping us safe in the organization, came to us. They used to ask for data exports. It actually there was a coup in Turkey, I think it was.
Yeah, 2 years ago there was a coup attempt in Turkey, and it happened on Friday night at like 11 p.m. And Brad and I were obviously with our families and doing whatever we were doing. And the security team was frantically calling us because they didn't have a way that they could just go in and figure out where our employees are, okay? And so after that, we thought we need to do something about that. And we thought, well, Tableau's a perfect fit for those guys. We'll build them something, we'll update it every week or month or whatever we do, and we'll have it out there for them in their vision portal so they can jump in the middle of the night, on the weekends, what have you, and they can get the information that they need.
Because at the end of the day, they need to know where our employees are and how to get a hold of them if something happens. And also where our buildings are actually located as well if something happens.
Yeah.
And that was, there's the coup that was a good example, but what really, I think, sort of gave us some leverage in the organization is, if you remember, of course, the hurricanes in Texas and in Florida, they came to us and said, guys, we really liked what you've done with the maps in the past. What can you do to help us out? Because we're going to be going to those locations so we know where people are, using that geospatial awesomeness that's in Tableau to show where people are located, the size of the circle, how many people are there, so they know how to handle that particular situation. So that really kind of flipped the script, and it helps sell what we do with analytics and HR, because we actually got a recent request. Those folks on that team actually forwarded over what we did and thought, hey, can you help out our marketing team with some similar type of data? So that's when you're looking at buy-in, that's how when you start getting those inroads with other places, either whether it's in HR or outside of HR, Tableau helps to do that with being able to quickly put something out and solve a business problem. All right, so the last one I'll show, and Andy, unless you took a peek here, this one's a bit of a surprise.
I didn't.
I was working hard on this one yesterday.
This is my surprise face.
It is the dashboard of utmost importance. All right, this one's a doozy. This one's all right. What's the percent of the time that Brad uses? All right. Kidding aside, I did this because we, wanted to kind of put that little Back to the Future reference in there again. But, Andy and I and Randy and Earl, we really work hard. We understand the importance of what we're doing for the business and trying to give value. But we like to have fun too. So when you think about rolling analytics out to your organization, yes, there's that working hard part of it, but if you're not having fun, it then becomes drudgery. And in my opinion, if you don't have the fun, if you don't have the passion, your end users are going to see that too. They're not going to get excited about what you're doing if you're not excited about that as well. So back to the fun piece, I will we'll go into our community. We'll do that next year. Look at that. See, I can be taught things, huh? Okay.
It's very painful as your teacher, by the way.
It is. It is. People get to lead. He gets to deal with me all the time.
So it's all well and good when you're enabling your organization to use technology, in this case to find insights. But we want to take it a step further. We want to, I mentioned our CHO asked us to teach the HR organization how to fish. The only way we know how to do that is to show them what they can do, tell them how they can apply it, and start to share insights between, in our case, business leaders. So this is a non-production version of the analytics community site that we're building in HR. Now we're building it from HR, but we want this to be a collaboration between the HR analysts, the insights analysts who work in things like finance and sales and marketing. We also want it for a place for general business folks to go when they have a problem. So we're going to do neat things like have office hours. We're going to have blogs. Obviously, we have a link out to Vision, the portal you just saw Brad show you. But really, we want to model this after our two favorite communities, Tableau and Alteryx, because we spend a lot of our time in those two communities. And so we wanted to build something like that as well. So Brad, if you want to click through there, we can certainly show these guys what we're thinking about. So what is Vision? This is for the new user of our portal, of our community, of some of the tools that we use. Just describing what it is. What's Vision? Why do I need it? Why don't I need it in some cases? And then Brad, if you pop back to home, on the left-hand side, you'll see office hours, recommendation, tools, and resources. That's where we're going to link out to everything we do. You don't have to go there because there's nothing there yet. There was actually a
Mayan calendar.
Calendar there that I put there. I thought it was kind of funny that we had office hours on Tuesday and ritual sacrifice on Thursday. But I didn't think keeping that presentation was a good idea. Then you can go out obviously to Vision. That's where the analytics tool is. This is our concept for a hangout. Again, don't know why that's not loading, but this is our idea of having polls and blogs, and I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan, so you see some polls from whatever time that was, I put them in there. This is where we want to start collaborating. This is where we want to start not being the only voices that are being heard in HR analytics. We want also some outside voices to be heard as well. If you'll jump back home, Brad, and then go over to Trends. Trends is sort of an extension of the Hangout. That's actually a real viz from our Tableau server, and the popularity of some of the...
Not the storm tracking.
Yeah, not the storm thing. Although, when you heard Brad's example of the security team talking about Harvey and talking about Irma things, that could very well be one of the most popular vizzes. And so we want people to come out here. We want them to see what we're doing. But really, we want them to share amongst themselves. We want to leverage all of that awesome thought that's going on in the organization. We don't have the ability to tap into that right now.
Think about, especially with the stuff that's coming off the server, there might be something that another business is using and thinking, wow, I didn't know that was out there. Maybe I need to use that too. Because like Andy said too, the biggest part is the users at the end of the day, they know what they want too. And that helps us in that design phase of what it is, help meet their needs.
Awesome. So we have about, 11 minutes here. So in closing, I hope what we were able to do was, at least in your minds, bridge the gap or the divide between technology and community. By including our customers in some of the more important technical decisions that we make, we're rewarded with better adoption. We're rewarded with more trust, which is huge in what we all do in this room. And it's a solution that truly serves our stakeholders from A to Z. And I'll end today with a quote from an engineering professor at MIT named Harold Abelson. He said, "Programs must be written for people to read and only incidentally for machines to execute." Thank you. Yes, please.
It looks like every time you're dragging in
Mhm.
it's changing, obviously. Did you create an extract for it and reverse why it's in the database?
In this particular instance, it's extracts
So you just
for demonstrative purposes.
refresh for each database that you
Yeah, in HR, what we're finding, and I think this is going to change, but in HR, what we're finding is our primary refresh rate is monthly and quarterly.
Yeah.
Because giant talent metrics don't change on a day-to-day basis or a weekly basis. So we've been lucky in that sense. Now, the pinwheel you saw, the design for our Hadoop cluster, we want that to be live connections in here in the future. That's our goal.
Yes, go ahead.
Do you have payroll and benefits?
That's a great question. Do we have payroll and benefits information in there? I'll quickly answer that. No, and I'll say not yet. But that we would definitely like to go there. And I'll say a little bit with the pay piece, where we're moving towards. We'll look at maybe cost per employee with the benefit salary, so to speak. We'll have that in there. So I guess maybe we do have some benefits in there, but ideally we would like to be able to start looking at salaries, how we are competitive, and have that sort of information in here.
We're very selfish when it comes to the data, the HR data. We want all of it.
Yeah.
So that's our goal. Yes, in the back, please.
Can you kind of describe how you do the data governance program and kind of keep up with all the
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the
So
question
how-
was,
okay.
I think the question was, how did we develop the governance program? How did we do the training? How do we do all of that?
And how we keep up, I think, was the other part of that as well.
Yeah, kind of where we're at.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, that's really good. So it took us a long time. And I don't mean to discourage you, but it takes a long time to get the organization ready for something like that. One of the first things, I would say for the first 18 months to 2 years, it was a little bit of an adversarial relationship that we had with our HR folks who felt like we were measuring their capability. So one of the first things we did as a function was to go out to the organization and say, hey, listen, guys, this has nothing to do with you. It's not about you. It's about our processes. Our processes are broken. Our processes are causing problems in the data, and this is the best way we know how to solve it. So we tried to squash that. It didn't, like I said, it didn't work right away. It took us a couple of years to get past it. After we did that, we went through a pretty comprehensive training program with everybody in human resources. In fact, I think even, maybe not in the data quality dashboard itself, but in the other supplemental materials that we have, you can still link out to all of that information. And we had one of our teams in Ireland
Yes.
put together that training. I think it was a couple of days that everybody went through it. And that was our way of sort of leveling the playing field for everyone. They now understood what we were doing. We think they understood why we were doing it. They understood how what they do can impact our data quality. And that was really the important thing. If you guys want to get anything out of, in our case, employee data, you've got to make sure the data works. Data's got to be right, or as right as it can be.
Can't be strategic without it.
Yeah. So there's no silver bullet when it came to the governance thing. We tried it. We did it. We took a step back. We did it again. A little bit further. We took a step back. And by the time we got to the point where CEB reached out to us and said, hey, we want to do a profile on you, we were pretty well established. The Q score, as I described, again, and there's no smoke and mirrors behind the Q score. It's the number of exceptions divided by the head count in whatever aggregation we're doing. We usually do it by business unit and by country. Became part of how we measure. So simultaneously going through the governance program, we're also going through a continuous improvement initiative in human resources. That measure became one of the key performance indicators for our continuous improvement initiative. So coincidentally, happily for us, it became right out of the gate something that we use to measure in some cases, the effectiveness of HR programs and the sort of continuous improvement that we were working on.
Last point I'll make about that is before we had Tableau, we used to go through the governance meetings every month with our, we'll call them sort of business leaders and what their level of responsibility is and review their errors. And it was done through PowerPoint because that's the technology at the time, but man, it was a snooze fest. And now it's,
Yeah, it was.
now it's the Tableau, what you saw in the demo. So it's more of a real, it's really cool because you can have those engaging conversations because of Tableau and say, oh, let's look at this, let's filter it here, why is this happening? And actually come out of those meetings with some solutions. Then the other part, we've actually had some business leaders go into it ahead of time and come to the meeting and actually have, oh, I see what's going on here, this is what we need to fix. So yeah, because of Tableau, there was that engagement in the governance process.
Are you still having the monthly meetings?
Yes, we do have that.
Yeah, we never wanted to go completely out of people's minds. And you know, we're now pretty ingrained in analytics and human resources at this point. And so when we look at things like promotion rates and things, if they're going to notice right away if our leadership ranks promotion numbers are wrong. And so they're very keyed into not making that wrong because their superiors and our executive teams are looking at the results of those analytics, those measures.
Yes.
Kind of first pitched the whole process improvement.
Yeah.
How did you rationalize the time it would take to do that versus your current demand, and how did you sell that to your customers as a priority rather than the constant
That's really good. And you will get, everyone in this room will get to a tipping point where your answer to the next request is, I don't have time to do that. I can't do that anymore. I can't do that anymore unless you invest in the things that make my job easier and make the values that I produce for you better. And so for us, it was a relatively, I'm not going to say an easy transition, but it worked for us because there were pockets in the organization that were already using Tableau. They were also already starting to talk about big data and how we can leverage Hadoop and those sorts of things to hub the data. They wanted more and they wanted it better. And we said, fine, if you want more and you want it better, this is how we have to do it. And so, like I said, Brad and I are the only desktop users in human resources. We have over 900 people in HR all over the world, and Brad and I are the only desktop users. So it didn't come, cost really didn't come into play. The server was just getting established. The Hadoop cluster was just getting established. So those things for us to adopt were relatively cost effective. The things we went out on our own were like, you know, Alteryx, for example. But again, none of those things are cost prohibitive if you can make a good business case for it. And I spend like half of my time writing business cases for, you know, Cloudera support and all this other stuff. It just has to make sense. But they have to want it, right? I mean, you can't go in there guns ablaze and say, you know, we need analytics and we need all this money to do it. If they haven't asked you for it, it's going to be a really difficult sell.
And 2 points I wanted to add to that was, the first one was, what was the second one, I think I just lost it. But the first one, when we think about like when we're rolling analytics, it was kind of cool. We had some projects we wanted to work on, and we thought, okay, this is a good maybe way we can start using the Tableau, and that helps sort of sell what we're moving towards. And one of those was engagement survey. I think a lot of us are in HR, we've done engagement surveys, and that was for one business that they wanted to use Tableau. And it used to take them, I'd say, a month to even get it at their data, visualize it, and then that was at best. And then moving it into Tableau, ended up having the conversation of how they wanted to visualize things, and then actually getting the final product only took maybe a week, if that. So that starts building in the wow factor, and then you can kind of say to your higher ups, I'm like, wow, do you really want to stick to the process that takes months, less time for insights, costs more money? I mean, I don't know of too many leaders that would say, yeah, I'd rather do that. And luckily, too, when I talked about the single viz, that actually kind of got born out of, it was sort of just, our director said, I want you guys to put that in the portal for our HR VP. So it was sort of cobbling at the, sort of getting that technology ready right away for our HR VP to see that stuff. And he saw that and was completely wowed. We had a meeting with him, got his ear, and wow. I mean, he was going on his iPad, pulling in metrics, and I think that right there, you get that leadership, they're going to love it. You know, they're going to start saying trickling down. You know, it's the old adage: you get them, you get everybody.
So how large is your HR analytics team? How many do you?
You're looking at it.
Yeah.
Now we're the analysts, and there are 2 developers. So the guys who built all the HTML and jQuery programming for the Vision portal are the other 2 guys on our team. They help us a lot with data extraction. You know, so I don't know if there are other SAP shops in here, but SAP is notoriously difficult to get the data out in a usable form, and so those guys help us with that as well.
I just wanted to know, within HR, you must have divisions of
Yes.
position recruitment.
Sure. Yep.
How do you get all those stakeholders to, come to centralized analytics unit?
Mhm.
Where you do this 360 reporting and cater to all their needs with analytics. And you can't look at one part of HR, you look at
Sure.
everything.
Mhm. Yeah.
So how did all of them come together to join hands with you?
I mean, first of it is executive sponsorship. We had executive sponsorship out of the gate from our leaders in human resources. That was really important. Also, I was hired at TE 6 years ago to do an analytics job. When I got here, we didn't have analytics. We didn't have anything like that. We could barely report on all the employees we had in all 63 of our countries. So it was always something the organization had asked for. They didn't have the aptitude within the COEs and within the HR folks that were in the businesses to do it, nor did they have the time or the interest in doing it. And so there was a hole there, there was a need there, and that's what we're trying to fill. For the first 5 years, it was me and, well, for the first 4 years, I guess, it was me and another guy who just ran reports every day. That was the extent of the analytics team.
Were you part of the reporting team before?
Technically, still are part of the reporting team, although Brad and I don't really do any reporting anymore. And that's one thing that's evolving as well. When you start to talk about better ways to combine all that weird data you have all over the place, the next question is this going to replace our reporting tool? Because right now our reporting tool only has employee data in it for active and terminated employees, basically our HRIS system. Well, it doesn't have performance, it doesn't have comp, it doesn't have succession, and all the other cool stuff people want to talk about. The inevitable question is, okay, now you guys have pulled this into a hub, can we start reporting out of it? Haven't done that yet. Our mission when we go out and we talk about this is to say this is not a reporting tool. This has nothing to do with reporting, other than the fact that we're using the same data you would if you were, pulling a report from a system. Yes.
So along those same lines,
Mhm.
I think you mentioned the success factors.
Yes.
Yes.
How were you getting the data out of there? Were you just reporting out?
So, like I said, we're really lucky to have 2 developers who can crack that nut for us. So right now, what they do is they've built .NET applications that, for the on-prem SAP system, use remote function calls to take the data directly out of the underlying tables and use either the SuccessFactors API or the OData API to extract that. Now, it's really interesting you ask that because we're starting to talk about the HRIS in the cloud, right? The HRIS system right now is about 90% of the data Brad and I use for analytics. How are we going to get that data out of the cloud? Because SuccessFactors doesn't want to make it easy once your data's in the cloud to get it out of the cloud because they want you to use their solutions for analytics and all that other stuff, right? So that's a big thing that kind of keeps me up at night is how do we crack that? We can do it in-house, right? I mean, we can build applications that use the APIs to extract the data, extract the deltas on a nightly basis, put them into the data hub. We use Alteryx to cram them all together, massage them, do our thing, and then visualize them. But is that a good long-term solution for us? I don't know.
Function structure within your company, and have you ever had any challenges with overlap?
Let me answer your first question first. So until about 2 to 3 years ago, it was the wild, wild west. Those who needed the information went out and figured out a way to get the information, okay? They went out, some of them for short periods of time adopted things like Tableau, but by and large they were doing a lot of their own work, okay? One of our MOs by developing this HR Analytics COE was not to discourage anybody from doing any work in other pockets within human resources. What we did discourage is that if you do it, you're accountable for that. You've got the same access, they've got the same access to the data as I do. If you do something and it turns out poorly, it turns out poorly. And I think Brad mentioned this earlier, we're not going to compare your numbers to our numbers. Our numbers are our numbers. We pulled data on a specific date for a very specific purpose, and here are the results. I don't know why yours are different than mine. It's not my job to figure out why. So we never told anybody they couldn't do anything, right?
Yeah.
But they're finding it much easier to work with us because they can describe a business problem. Because remember, there's no pockets of analytics out in the general HR community. Some of them do some data-like things and some reporting and things like that. But by and large, everything is done here. And they like it that way.
Yeah. And to add to that, each businesses may have a representative that works with us specifically. So that helps. That maybe in the past that representative might have been their sort of report jockey. Well, now they're more of, their business leader will say, either the business leader will work with us directly or say, hey, this is something I want you to work with Andy or Brad with to develop something in Tableau and get a process around. So that's helpful too. And that just came with building that trust over time.
It did. If you can prove it a couple of times, if you can show value one or two times, help somebody solve a business problem, simple or complex, they're in. I mean, again, and the reason I read you that quote at the end of the presentation was because all the fancy technology and all the stuff in the portals and the data hubs and all that stuff, it's great, but if the community's not there, if the customer support and the value they see in what you're doing is not there, all the technology in the world doesn't matter.
Yeah, and that's what Tableau does, right? And with our community, it'll be the same way, where it's, hey guys, we'd like to see maybe this update. Now, maybe not everything would come out of there, but we can at least say, let's take a look at and find some trends amongst what needs to be improved, what we build. Because those dashboards and the portal won't be static. They're going to develop over time as we get more information from our consumers, so they have that buy-in and they can feel that they're actually a part of what's being developed. And also as Tableau technology improves, we're going to make it more efficient. Looking forward to Hyper, those types of things. So yeah, the community is going to be really, I think, critical to our ongoing success.
Yeah, yeah. And it's a long road, guys. I mean, I'll use an example. Our board of directors. So Brad and I do a lot of reporting on the talent side for the board of directors meetings that our organization has every quarter. We still do all the work in the workflows that you saw. We still do all the visualizations in Tableau, and then we plunk it into a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Because we haven't gotten that group in particular, we haven't gotten them on the Tableau side yet.
Getting there, but yeah, it's still.
Yeah, we're getting there. Mm-hmm. Again, the visuals they see are Tableau visuals. They don't know that. Mm-hmm. But because we're just one tiny cog in that massive thing that the board of directors discusses once a quarter, we don't have enough oomph to get everybody else over the line and say, we're not doing PowerPoints anymore. So the best thing that can happen to you guys is you go into Excel to do a VLOOKUP and you almost forget how to do it. Every time I almost forget how to do something in Excel, I'm so happy because that means I haven't done it in a while. Yeah. And that's the best thing that can happen.
For sure.
Any other questions, guys? Awesome. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.